Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical forecast here by Agents Weather Forecast. And as you guessed, it's going to be another update for focusing on 92L as the confidence for this becoming tropical storm Claudette is continuing to increase here as well. We're going to continue to watch out now, not only for this timing for when it's going to form, but as well as go into a deeper forecast today on the effects that the United States will feel. So this will be a lot more of a detailed forecast compared to my other ones, as we're a lot closer into the actual landfall. So we're going to be getting a really close look into the actual effects as well. So if you guys live in Dixie Alley or the Southeast, I would recommend you guys subscribe to the channel, as I'm going to continue to do forecasts like these until landfall. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the tropical forecast. So here's a look now at the tropical weather outlook here by the National Weather Service. So obviously Bill did become extra tropical, and 94L has completely died in confidence. So right now the only thing we're watching out for future advisories is going to be Invest 92L. So we do still have those disorganized showers and thunderstorms across portions of the Bay of Campeche, and those are likely to continue to increase here and strengthen, as we're expecting a diurnal maximum by tonight here. So we're seeing a pretty big wave of convection blowing up. Right now the low pressure is kind of right into portion of Mexico, so the convection is going to start really dying out because of the land interaction. But this is low expected now to go further to the north instead of to the south. So now it's looking like it's going to start into a strengthening phase, and as well going to start becoming a little bit more organized. So we are expecting here the Air Force to send an aircraft to investigate the area on Thursday, which will be tomorrow. So watching out for an investigation here by tomorrow. And we're really watching out for some really heavy rain, but 70-90% here. So this is a 90% for the next 5 days and a 70% for the next 48 hours. So a pretty big increase, because I believe last time I made a video, it was, I think it was 70, was it 70-30, I think? But let's go ahead and get a look now at the IR forecast. So here, look now at the IR forecast. So kind of right now, we have a pretty big area of convection blowing up right now. So yesterday, we had a ton of convection across portions of inland Mexico, as this kind of low was still kind of technically over the waters. But we're starting to develop some really strong thunderstorms here with a lot of lightning strikes with really high cloud tops with a negative 90 degrees Celsius. And those higher cloud tops. So we're talking about some really intense thunderstorms. But right now, we're kind of starting to see a trend in convection here across portions of the Bay of Campeche, and that is where we're expecting here that new low to develop. So it looks like a new low is developing here within tropical or within MS92L. So we're starting to see pretty good amount of convection blowing up here. So looking at for some pretty intense thunderstorms already hitting up to negative 70 degrees Celsius. So either way, we're seeing some intense thunderstorms develop. Let's go ahead and look at the true colors zoomed out here, so you can kind of get a better idea of what this convection looks like kind of far out. And it's exactly what we're looking at for right here. So technically, the last time we looked at the low pressure was down here, but it looks like there's a relocation right now of where that actual low pressure is. So it looks like there's going to be some relocation. So really watching out for the low to be somewhere within this region. And like I did say, once it starts moving north into the actual warm SSTs of the Bay of Campeche and no more land interaction within Mexico, then we're going to start really watching out here for some actual development, actual concerns for strengthening. So let's now go ahead and get a look here at the current conditions. Now looking at the SSTs right now. So at the moment, we're seeing some really warm water, specifically off the Gulf Coast here, right? We're watching out for landfall, and that is Louisiana. Right now, the warmest waters we're seeing right now in the Atlantic are just off the coast of Louisiana, and we're seeing basically just under 31 degrees Celsius. So we're really watching out for some pretty good conditions once this storm leaves the Bay of Campeche, with very warm waters the whole way from where it is now near Mexico to the coast of Louisiana. So it kind of has a long way of potential strengthening here. Right now, this is kind of over 28.5 to possibly nearly 29 degrees Celsius, while it's going to be moving into a lot more warmer waters, almost 31 degrees Celsius. So go ahead and look at the actual dates here. So once we now go to around the 18th, you see the conditions or waters will be a lot cooler. But we're going to be seeing basically around 28 to maybe 29 degrees Celsius waters. And by the 20th here, we're watching out for that landfall. We're going to be seeing some pretty decent waters, 27 degrees, maybe even 28 degrees Celsius. So conditions are not bad when you're looking at the actual SSTs wise. Let's not go ahead and get a look here at the shear values and see if there's any updates on the GFS 12Z. So let's go ahead and look at now the Bay of Campeche, and like we saw yesterday in my last video, there was a lot more shear in the Bay of Campeche, and actually it moved a lot more to the south, which pressured this low pressure to move a lot more to the south. But right now that has continued to really change in forecast, as there's not expected to be much short shear now right now in the Bay of Campeche. So like I did to say, this year in the Bay of Campeche was expected to really die out, and it's exactly what it's doing right now. So currently what its low is right now, there's really less than 20 off the shear, and even if we go the next 6 hours, that shear's going to rapidly continue to die out now. Going to be seeing a very widespread area of anywhere from maybe 10 knots to maybe even 20 knots. So either way, there's not that much in the Bay of Campeche, and literally 12 hours later, if this relocation for this low actually does happen where I think it will, it's going to be in a lot better conditions within the next 12 hours, possibly anywhere from maybe from 15 to 18 knots, really max. As we now go later into the 17th and even further into the 18th, this low pressure is going to start moving a little bit more to the north in a huge pocket of basically no shear whatsoever. So this whole path, it's going to have no shear. And by the 19th, when it makes landfall at nighttime and the 19th, it's going to have absolutely no shear in its path whatsoever. So there is absolutely basically no shear for concern for this system to prevent any development. Let's not go ahead and get a look here at the precipitation anomaly here. So obviously we have a pretty significant big wave of moisture across portions of the southern Gulf of Mexico, including the Bay of Campeche. So right now you see the most amount of moisture right there is where we have the current low pressure for 92L. But if we start to see that relocation phase, when we were watching out for that low pressure to kind of develop furthermore towards the northeastern Bay of Campeche, which I did say when we were looking at IR. So we're going to start seeing an increase here of moisture across the northeast Bay of Campeche. And this moisture bubble is going to continue to really increase in size and just overall strength of it. Basically, we're going to start seeing a lot more precipitation in general. And by the 18th, you're going to see some really dark blues now popping up. So either way, we'll be seeing a pretty significant moisture bubble. So there's no threat whatsoever when it comes to dry air. So we're seeing warm SSTs, basically no shear at all, at least after the next 12 hours. And there's going to be no threat for dry air. Let's not go ahead and get a look here at the new GFS 12Z MSLP and see what they have to say with the new updates. So they do have that low pressure by the next 40-ish hours or so, kind of being in the central Gulf of Mexico by the 18th. And as we go later on into the 19th morning here, they do actually have it at 1,004 millibars, and still already as early as Friday morning or even maybe even Thursday evening, bringing in rain for portions of the Gulf Coast. So there's going to be some pretty big flooding threats. And then the GFS has it making landfall here for portions of south central Louisiana as a 1,005 millibar system. And it's going to bring in possibly some significant severe weather. So we cannot forget about the effects for the United States, possibly some minimal storm surge, big time flooding, and severe weather is a big thing I'm really watching out for. Let's not go ahead and get a look here at the NAN 12 kilometer update for 12Z. And they are also showing something pretty significant. So let's go ahead and see what the NAM is showing. So they have this low pressure being at 1,003 millibars by the 18th. And then kind of have it strengthening to 1,000 millibars in the next 60 hours. So kind of getting into Saturday. And then they have it making landfall on the 19th, the night of the 19th, probably around 20-ish G, making landfall there for portions of southwestern and south central coast of Louisiana at 992 millibars, possibly in the evening or overnight hours. So either way, really watching out for some pretty big effects for specifically Louisiana is going to be the main area for a landfall, but we're going to be really watching out for a big tornado threat all the way across the portion of Dixie Valley because of this. We're going to be seeing some pretty strong outer banding with possibly some surface-based supercells. And again, you don't really need that much criteria to see some tornadoes in tropics. So either way, we're going to be really watching out for this. Let's not go ahead and get a look here at the vorticity forecast according to the GFS. So there they have that vorticity signature for the current low, kind of just near the. I believe the low pressure is kind of directly over Mexico, but. By the 18th, there's that vorticity signature for portions of the northern Gulf or central Gulf of Mexico. So the vorticity signature is kind of really widespread, not organized, but it kind of gets its act together by the 19th before landfall, where it has completely, I I guess, filled with counterclockwise vorticity spin there in the atmosphere. So it's going to get it back together before the landfall. That's 500 millibars. If we go a little bit closer to the actual surface at 850 millibars there. So typically 500 millibars will be more important for tropics, but 850 is still kind of a bit closer to the surface. So even a little bit closer to the surface, we're seeing a really good signature for vorticity. So either way, there's going to be on almost all levels of the atmosphere some really decent amount of vorticity from Tropical Storm Claudette. Let's not go ahead and get a look here at the NAM 12 kilometer 500 millibar, which is basically in the center of the atmosphere, vorticity as well. So they obviously kind of have this vorticity coming together in a certain area of low and trough for the northeastern Bay of Campeche within the next 15 or so hours. As we not go later on, they kind of have it developing a lot better into the western Gulf of Mexico. So a little bit more of a western approach here. And they kind of have it really strengthening in vorticity right before a landfall. Could be because of the really warm waters, or because there's going to be a lot less shear, or just because that moisture bubble overall just kind of strengthens and continues to get larger. So either way, some really strong vorticity right before a landfall. I mean, that is a ton of vorticity and spin the atmosphere, and I kind of see the banding. We kind of see some banding within that vorticity, so it's like a pretty decent system here according to the NAM 12 kilometer. We're sure the NAM 3 kilometer, but they're kind of only they're just kind of really aggressive right now, and they're kind of going all the way up to south central Texas. So I kind of want to keep things that are a little bit more reliable. Let's now go ahead and look at 850 millibar. Vorticity, so you can kind of see a ton of vorticity kind of developing there across the Bay of Campeche, and just look at that massive signature just before landfall. So really watching out for a pretty moderate, maybe even high-end tropical storms possible, which I kind of doubt. I think it's going to kind of be more of a moderate tropical storm. Let's now go ahead and get a look here at the 10-meter wind speed here in miles an hour. So let's go ahead and see kind of that area of low within the next 30 hours or so, kind of bringing in those stronger winds across the northeastern quadrants. We're looking at maybe 30 miles an hour or so. As we not go later on here, we're going to kind of get our strongest winds, most likely as it's developed within the next 30-ish hours or so. So kind of really watching it to develop within the next 48 hours or so. Going to get up to 44 miles an hour in the next 32 hours. And then we're actually going to get up to 41 miles an hour, almost 42, and then we actually get up to 45 miles an hour once we get to around Friday the 18th, and then we kind of get back to 45 just before landfall. We're actually, this low pressure is going to have a pretty large wind field, so although the low pressure is going to be far off the coast, we're going to be seeing some really pretty big effects already, so that could lead to some pretty good amounts of storm surge, because we're going to be seeing these winds impacting the coast far before a landfall. So we could definitely see some pretty large waves across portions of Louisiana all the way up to areas like Pensacola. So watching out for some minimal storm surge, and we can actually get maybe up to 47, maybe even 48 miles an hour just before a landfall. So we're looking at maybe for a moderate tropical storm. Let's actually go ahead and look here at the 10-meter wind gusts in miles an hour, so we can get a better look at what it's going to bring in for inland areas as well. So going to get up to around 48 mile an hour wind gust here for portions of Friday. As we go later on now into portions of even Saturday, you're going to start seeing some gusts as early as around, let's see here, this is going to be Saturday, actually, no, it's going to be Friday night. Going to start getting here some really good gusts up to 42 mile an hour gusts for portions of the eastern parishes for Louisiana. And then kind of when we start looking at that landfall, we're going to start seeing maybe around 30 to 40 knots gust, or 40 mile an hour gust, sorry. And it's going to continue to see some pretty good gusts across Alabama, maybe up to 49 mile an hour gusts. And it's going to continue bringing some gusty winds there for Georgia, Atlanta, maybe 35 miles an hour. And that'll kind of die out once we get into inland areas. Let's now go ahead and get a look now at the 10-meter wind for the NAM 12 kilometer. Obviously, the NAM 12 kilometer is getting this to be a lot stronger, because obviously NAMs like to overreact, or maybe even not really overreact, but tend to just be stronger in general. So by Friday morning, getting up to already 47 miles an hour. There's that low, pretty large wind field in general. Let's not go ahead and get a little bit deeper into Friday. That's when we start seeing a little bit more of a strengthening trend, still kind of consistent towards 40 miles an hour. Getting up to 45 miles an hour, then 51 miles an hour before landfall, and then continue to strengthen here at 51 miles an hour. So like I did say, there is a chance this could strengthen a little bit more just before landfall because of those really warm SSTs. And then at 6 to 52, actually almost 53 miles an hour. So it looks like it's going to be maybe 53 miles an hour just before landfall, according to the NAM 12 kilometer. So although the colors look really, really like crazy and dark and all that, it's just 53 miles an hour. It's a little bit different there. Let's now go ahead and get a look here at the 10-meter wind gust. So obviously it's going to be a lot higher. So as early as around tomorrow night, getting already up to 45 mile an hour gust according to the NAM. And they're going to get up to already 62 miles an hour gusts here by Friday morning. And as we go right before a landfall, going to get up to a 60 mile an hour gust, 68 mile an hour gust, 69 mile an hour gust. So definitely a pretty big gust according to the NAM 12 kilometer, and getting gusts up to 60 plus across Louisiana as this makes landfall. So now let's go ahead and get into the severe weather part of this. So there is going to be a pretty big threat for severe weather, and as well as some tornadoes with this. We all remember Isaias had a 10% for tornadoes. I think there's definitely a chance for some good chances for tornadoes and overall some significant severe weather. So first thing I want to go ahead and get a look is the dew points. Because of this tropical system, we're going to be seeing some really high dew points even as early as Friday evening, the 18th, getting ready dew points into the mid 70s, 73, 74, 75. And then the day of landfall and the around noon, getting 77-degree dew points already, and getting up to 78-degree, 78-degree dew points. Look at that, 77, 78 for portions of Louisiana at around the evening hours, and then during landfall at around landfall at around the 19th at the night and morning hours of the 20th. We're going to start seeing some really good dew points here of 78, 79, and even up to almost 80-degree dew points. So either way, dew points will be very, very high in the overnight hours between the 19th and the 20th. So dew points are very, very good, and that is definitely something to keep a close eye on. As well, relative humidity obviously going to be very high, 100% across much of Dixie Alley. So those two factors are already pretty big factor for the severe weather. Let's now go ahead and get a look here at the cave values. So before we actually go ahead and look at the cave values, you're probably going to say, Adrian, these cave values aren't that impressive. What do you mean significant severe weather? Well, just remember, you don't need that high cave values for tropical systems or tropical severe weather or even tornadoes within the outer bands of hurricanes. You actually only need over 1,000 for tropical severe weather threats. So let's go ahead and look at the surface-based cape here by the morning hours, early morning hours by the 19th, already getting over 1,800 plus over the coast regions. And as we get into around 5 o'clock the 19th, going to start getting over 2,000 joules per kilogram there for portions of Louisiana and Mississippi. So obviously the eastern quadrants are typically the most intense outer bands where you won't be watching out for those surface-based supercells. So the main area to watch out for tornadoes will be kind of northeast of that low, which would be kind of for these areas, and then overnight into the morning hours watching out for these areas as well. But going to see some pretty good cape values in general here, and as well throughout the 20th, going to get widespread 2,000 joules per kilogram. So either way, it's not looking too shabby at all. I mean, even into the really early morning hours, still seeing almost 2,000 for a portion of the Gulf Coast. So either way, we're seeing some really good cape values for a tropical system or tropical system severe weather in general. Let's go ahead and get a look at the overall total precipitation according to the GFS. So this is by the 22nd here. So we see a ton of rain, and obviously that rain is going to be all for the northeast portion of the low. So this is supposed to make landfall kind of right here. All that heaviest rain will kind of stick around to the northeastern quadrant, and that's going to be aiming for Alabama, Pensacola, Mississippi, eastern Louisiana, and even Georgia as well. So Texas and western Louisiana and Arkansas really won't get affected much, but areas like Tuscaloosa, Hattiesburg, Birmingham, Atlanta, Georgia, Gulfport, and even New Orleans obviously doesn't get hit really hard. And due to this, we're expecting maybe the worst storm surge as well be here in those northeastern quadrants, because that's going to be the kind of clockwise spin, kind of aiming those waves for those regions as well. But going to get, according to the GFS, over a foot of rain across Alabama and Mississippi there. So either way, watching out for some really intense flash flooding threats. Let's now go ahead and get a look here at the maximum individual wave height here. So obviously we're watching out for some pretty intense storm surge, and we're actually getting up to 26-foot waves here according to the European, and that's going to be kind of aiming straight for portions of southeastern Louisiana, and even going to start getting up to maybe even 17-foot waves for portions of not too far off the Gulf Coast of Louisiana and Mississippi there. But as we get kind of towards the actual landfall, we're going to be getting only around 20 to 23 foot waves. And the actual coastal areas will only see maybe 7 to 10 foot waves, but off the coast here, going to get over 20-foot waves. So either way, we can't rule out the possibility for some decent storm surge. Obviously, we need some decent amount of shear force, the tropics, but obviously you don't need that much shear because obviously you're talking about a tropical system. So it's not like you don't really have enough winds there. Let's now go ahead and look now at the 19th here on the NAM 12 kilometer. So you can kind of see right kind of before landfall, you're seeing a ton of shear already developing across Dixie Alley up to around 40 to 50 knots. And as we go kind of to the actual landfall, we're going to be seeing almost possibly over 70 knots. So we're going to be seeing a ton of shear within this area here. So either way, we're going to be seeing a ton of shear, actually a lot of shear, over 70 knots in some areas. So very, very interesting. So one thing I want to show you guys, something very interesting, is the soundings here for the STP on the NAM. Obviously, STP can be very inaccurate and obviously over forecast early out, but I just want to give you guys a good look of how good these soundings are looking here. So let's go ahead and look now at 18Z on the 19th. This is getting be already nearing landfall. We're gonna be seeing a lot of possible hazards for PDS tornadoes, but let's just ignore that because let's just ignore all of this really quickly, and we want to look at the photographs. I mean, this photograph is very, very good. I mean, this thing's going all the way down to the south here, winds, and then goes straight to the west. So this is a very good, typical sounding here and photograph. So this is a very impressive photograph, so which is why it's a little bit more concerning here. As well, we're seeing really good K values, 2600. Supercell composite parameter is at 19.6. But the one thing that's very interesting about all these soundings is how closely related the temperature and dew point temperatures are as well. So it's going to be allowing for the LCL to be very, very low, almost nearly the surface. And as well, overall critical angle is pretty good. Shear's not too shabby at all. I mean, it could be higher, but it's actually really good considering a tropical system. And look at the SRH, storm relative velocity, is at 537 for 3 kilometers and 254 for 1 kilometer. So these are very good soundings, and this is actually kind of just at landfall. So these soundings will be a lot better near the southeastern coast, getting up to another PDS sounding. But look at that photograph. That is a very good photograph. Critical angles at 88, so it's actually very, very good critical angle. The storm slinky is almost an exact C at this point, so that's exactly why we're watching out for some really good conditions overall. We're going to be seeing some really good cyclonic thunderstorms there. Look at the shear, though. That shear is very, very good. We're seeing at 1 kilometer, guys, 42 knots. 42 knots, 46 knots, and even 47 knots here at 3 kilometers. Seeing 2,000 joules per kilogram. Seeing 29.6 on supercell and 6.4 on STP. And like I said, LCL is right on the surface, basically. Lifted is at -4, so there is a decent amount of instability. I mean, overall, as well, we're kind of seeing an overall steering in the wind as we go up in the atmosphere. So these are all looking really good, really, really good sounding. I mean, 746 SRH at 3 kilometers. Let's now go to the actual big impact, though. We're going to be watching out for some tornadoes. Even the Gulf Coast there, tornado sounding. That is this is almost a perfect photograph. Almost a perfect photograph for the Gulf Coast there, for Mississippi there, 820 Cape. I know that's very, very, very low, but again, for tropics, you don't need that high Cape values actually. 75-degree dew point, 77-degree temperatures. So overall, a really, really saturated and really high dew points, obviously, as well. Shear's at a problem at 3 kilometers, 53 knots, and I mean at LCL cloud cover 70 knots. SRH is at 911 for 3 kilometers and 474 for 1 kilometer. So the amount of vorticity here is going to be so tight and so strong that we're seeing SRH numbers of over 900. I mean, look at that slinky. That slinky is almost perfect at 77 degrees. This is just really, really good soundings here. I mean, this is going to be a legit threat here. Obviously, this one's a little bit more contaminated because it has a 62.1 for supercell, but overall, even though it's contaminated, it's still a pretty big threat overall. 3,000 Cape, critical angles 88. That photograph's looking really good. So I know these numbers are really, really high and contaminated, but the photograph in general is not contaminated. That's actually a real photograph. 948 SRH, lifted in this at -6. I mean, this is going to be a really big day ahead of us, or a few days. So this can definitely be a pretty big tornado day. But hope you guys enjoy the video and see you guys later.